Most women don't know they've been living inside a story someone else wrote for them, not because they're weak, not because they're unaware, but because the story was installed so early, so quietly, that it started to feel like personality, like just who you are. This series exists to burn that down. The Sovereign Woman is not about becoming more confident. It is not about healing your inner child or learning to love yourself on a Tuesday morning with a journal and a candle. That world is full. That conversation has been had. This is about something your nervous system already knows, but your mind has been trained to override. Something that surfaces at 3 a.m. when the performance is finally off, and it's just you. And that quiet, unsettling feeling that you are living adjacent to your actual life, close to it, but not in it. We are going to go into that feeling, not around it. Let's start with the thing nobody has ever said to you plainly, the thing you have been circling your whole life, approaching and retreating from like an animal approaching fire. You were not broken, you were built differently, and the world punished you for it. You know what it felt like? The rooms where everyone else seemed to have received a manual you never got. The conversations that moved too fast or too shallow or in directions that made no sense to you. The groups that formed around you like water around a stone, flowing past, connecting on the other side, leaving you dry and separate and convinced, deeply convinced, that the fault was yours. That you were too much. Or not enough. Or the wrong shape entirely for the life you'd been handed. You smiled when you were supposed to. You learned the performance. God, you learned it well, learned it so well that sometimes you almost fooled yourself, almost felt it, almost belonged. But then it would pass, like a cloud shadow moving across a field, and you'd be standing there again in the exact same aloneness, wondering what was wrong with you that the warmth never stayed. And here is where I need you to stop. Right here. Because everything you just felt reading that tight recognition, that old familiar ache, that is not the symptom of a broken woman. That is the signature of a particular kind of mind. The world has a name for women like you. It cycles through them, too sensitive, too intense, too in your head, too serious, too much. The diagnosis changes with the decade, but the verdict is always the same. You are a problem to be managed, an excess to be trimmed, a wildness to be domesticated into something the room can tolerate. But here is the brutal truth they never tell you. The room was not the standard. The room was just the room. A collection of people who found comfort in the same frequencies, who built their belonging on a bandwidth you simply do not operate on. That is not your failure. That is physics. You were not too sensitive. You were calibrated for depths that most people do not have the equipment to reach. You were not too intense. You were burning at a temperature that the ordinary infrastructure of small talk and surface living was never built to contain. You were not too much. You were simply somewhere else, perceiving something else, carrying something else, and no one around you had the language for what you were holding. The outsider sees the architecture of the room because she is never fully inside it. She sees the exits, she sees the load-bearing walls, she sees what holds the whole structure up and what would bring it down. This is not metaphor, this is neurological. The woman who has spent her life on the outside of belonging develops a particular perceptual acuity. She learns to read the room because she cannot afford not to. She learns to feel the temperature change before anyone else shivers. She becomes, without intending to, extraordinarily precise about human nature, its vanities, its hungers, its unspoken rules, its fracture lines. Now I need to say something that is going to feel like I am pressing directly on a bruise, because I am. I am pressing on it on purpose. You have been using your outsiderness as evidence against yourself. You have taken the very thing that is your power and presented it over and over to a jury that was never qualified to judge it as proof of your inadequacy. You have been confessing to a crime you did not commit. Every time you sat in a room and felt that separateness and turned it inward, Why can I just be normal? Why is this so hard? What is wrong with me? You were doing the thing they trained you to do. You were taking the discomfort of your gift and converting it into shame. You were metabolizing their discomfort with you as your own failure. You were handing back the blade and asking them to use it on you. The isolated woman does not become isolated because she is unlovable. She becomes isolated because she sees too clearly for comfortable company, because she asks questions that disturb the settled order, because her presence creates a certain pressure, not of malice, but of depth. And depth is terrifying to people who have built their lives on the surface. She makes people feel seen in ways they did not consent to. She feels the undercurrents that the room has agreed to pretend don't exist. She cannot perform the ritual of pretending nothing is happening when everything is happening. And that refusal, that inability to lie with her presence, even when she is perfectly polite with her words, that is what gets her exiled. You want to know what the outsider woman actually sees? She sees the marriage that is 3 years from collapse at the dinner party where everyone is laughing. She sees the friend who is disappearing into someone else's definition of herself and smiling wider the more she disappears. She sees the leader who has mistaken fear for respect, the charming man who has never once been curious about another person, the group that has confused familiarity with love. She sees the gap between what people say and what they mean. She sees the thing nobody is naming. She carries the awareness of the unspoken like a stone in her pocket everywhere she goes, and she is tired. God, she is so tired, not because feeling is weakness, but because she has been feeling for everyone in every room for years, without permission, without recognition, without rest. And this is the part that matters most, the part that is both the wound and the gift, fused into one inseparable thing. She cannot turn it off. She never could. She tried distance and numbness and sarcasm and busyness and every other armor the modern world offers, and underneath all of it, the perceiving never stopped. The feeling never stopped. The knowing never stopped. Because it is not something she does, it is something she is. The capacity that made you an outsider is the same capacity that makes you capable of seeing what others cannot, loving at depths others cannot reach, creating what others cannot imagine, and holding space for truth that others cannot bear. The sensitivity that made every cold room colder, every rejection sharper, every loneliness more total. That same sensitivity is what makes you capable of perceiving beauty with your whole body, of reading a piece of music or a sentence or a human face and being genuinely, devastatingly moved, of loving someone so completely that they feel, perhaps for the first time in their life, actually known. The intensity that frightened people away, that is the engine of everything real you have ever made or said or done. That is the thing that will not let you be mediocre, will not let you stay small, will not let you keep pretending the surface is sufficient. That intensity is not your pathology. It is your vocation. The isolation that scarred you, that enforced solitude built in you a relationship with your own inner life that most people never develop. You know yourself. You have had to. You have sat in the rooms inside yourself that others never enter, have faced things there that others outsource to distraction, have developed a kind of interior fluency that is rare and hard and genuinely precious. You were not rejected because you were lesser. You were rejected because you were different, and different is threatening to the settled, and threatening things get cast out. That is the oldest story. And every single time, history has vindicated the exile over the comfortable majority that expelled her. Stop trying to get the room's permission. Stop presenting your nature to panels that were never equipped to assess it. Stop treating your outsiderness as a sentence when it has always been, from the very beginning, a selection. You were not left out. You were set apart. There is a difference so total, it can reorganize a life if you are willing to feel it all the way down. The wolf does not mourn that she cannot live in the house. The full moon does not apologize for what it pulls to the surface. The deep water does not wish it were shallower so more people could stand in it. You are not a failed version of what they wanted. You are a complete version of something they did not have the range to understand. And that, finally, after everything, is not a wound at all. That is the whole point. That was always the whole point. The outsider doctrine is not a consolation prize for the lonely. It is a description of a particular kind of human being who arrives in the world already tuned to frequencies the ordinary instruments cannot detect, who suffers because of it, who is made by the suffering, who carries, in the very place they were most hurt, the most accurate and original and necessary thing about them. You were not broken. You were being forged, and everything that ever excluded you was, without knowing it, without intending it, sharpening you. The isolated woman does not need to be fixed. She needs to be recognized, starting with herself.